Hello and welcome to this video, which is quite unusually for me, actually a requested video from a couple of my viewers. So normally my channel is based around music, but occasionally I've been looking into the Linux distribution Ubuntu Studio, as you know, it's built for creatives and musicians. And a lot of people have actually noticed how I have my Xfce desktop set up, and I have it set up sort of very much not to be how like a default Xfce setup looks. Here's what a default one looks like. And now here's mine. Now it's actually taken inspiration somewhat from the GNOME desktop environment, and also little bits of Unity here or there, and with a little couple of bits of Windows, as you know. Like most people, I've come from Windows, you dual boot to Windows 10 Pro. So we're going to go through point by point how to get your desktop to look pretty much exactly like mine. Let's go into it. So first off is actually all the themes I'm using. Specifically, we're talking about the GTK theme, which is what'll actually, you know, color everything like all the default programs and, you know, the file manager and everything. And it's quite a nice sort of dark theme I have here. And this is actually Umox Adlinux. It's actually one I made myself using the program of the same name, Umox, which you can find here, and actually isn't in the default Ubuntu repository. You actually have to download like packages for it. But I think I got mine going through the Flatpaks, which if you haven't already gotten set up, then you can go to this website, which is flatpak.org, and there's a setup for whichever distribution you're using. I'm using Ubuntu, but pretty much everything I'm saying here will work for, or should work for, all other distributions of Linux. If you follow this little guide here, you'll have Flatpak set up on your computer, and then you can install Umox through that. Now, if you actually have a look at Umox here, it's more like a GNOME sort of based app. It's an easy way of setting up GTK themes. It's based on Numix, I believe, although you can do other sort of bases of here. And you've got a little sort of guide at this side. This is what everything will look like, and you can just go through and just set up the colors exactly how you'd like it, export it, and you have a theme to go. And in fact, I've got the same thing going for my window theme, which you're going to see here. It's set to Umox Adlinux, and yeah, this is just a nice sort of black one, simple buttons. It's all I wanted. Everything else seemed a little bit too big, too round, just not quite what I wanted. So I went through Umox, and yeah, I've got it all set up. And I do wonder if the creators of Umox can watch this, if they did actually name it after the thing in Star Trek. I do wonder. And lastly, in my in sort of the main themes, I'm actually using the Faber icon theme. What I quite like about this is that it allows most of the programs, like if you look at Firefox there, or Steam, Thunderbird, KDN Live, GIMP, it allows them all to actually keep their default look while sort of having a very sort of neutral theme for everything else. You know, you've got stuff like Humanity, which follows a similar premise, but I don't like it when they're overly stylized. So I got this just through, I think it was just through sudo apt install Faber or Faber icon theme. It's very easy to get a hold of, especially if you're using a Ubuntu or I believe a Debian should be fine as well. A Debian-based distribution, you should be able to download this icon pack. And the only thing I needed to edit on it is that WordPress.com didn't actually have an icon out of the box. So I just set that up, and everything else looks really nice for it. And lastly, we have actually setting up Qt or Qt-based applications to follow your GTK theme. Now, I did a more in-depth video on this, looking at trying to get Clementine to follow your theme, but it should work for all other Qt-based applications. It's this Qt5 configuration tool, and you set the style to GTK2, which should allow everything else to follow your GTK settings. Because sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between the themes. Sometimes things like Clementine does just follow your GTK theme, but sometimes it doesn't quite sort of get the picture. But this will allow that to follow your theme, and so everything can look nice, universal, and really good. And before we get onto the panels, just one last thing I want to do is just open up the terminal, which we see this little thing here. Now, this is a package actually called ScreenFetch. So I could run it again if I wanted to, and there it goes. So once you've installed ScreenFetch, sudo apt install ScreenFetch, if you want it to be like mine, you have to set it up to actually boot just when you turn the terminal on. So here's what you're going to type in. You're going to type in nano space, that little squiggly thing, /.bashrc. Hit enter. I'm just going to go full screen here, and this is the sort of config file for bash, which is actually the sort of the layer of code, I believe it's referred to as, which runs under the terminal. So all the commands you do under a default installation of something like Ubuntu, for example, will be using bash as the shell. So what we're going to do is we're just going to scroll down to the bottom here. I'm just using the arrow key. It's going down, 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 down. All this is default other than that. And you see at the end we have here, it says phi. We're just going to go down like once or twice, type in ScreenFetch, bish bash bosh, done. So then we're going to go Control O to save, hit enter, and then it's Control X, I believe, to escape. There we are. And so if I close this and open it up again, there we go, you'll have ScreenFetch. Any other thing you get, I think there's something like NeoFetch, which is something similar. They should follow the same thing. All I've done there is I've told the terminal to run this extra command just when it opens. Now here's where the big stuff gets involved. This is actually what makes it look sort of, rather than looking like this, like a default Xfce installation, to actually looking like how mine looks now, like this. So we actually have 3 panels here. Now, if you're ever concerned at any point about messing anything up, then there's actually a great little tool that comes built in of Xfce, and it is called Panel Profiles. So if we go on there, then we have a load of different settings here. So I could click, the standard Xfce 4.14. Boom, we have this. I could go back to Ubuntu 18.04, which is how most people, if you're using something like Ubuntu or Ubuntu Studio, should come out. But my little one I've made is here. This is my little backup. And so everything should boot up how it normally does, and everything's gone back to normal. All the plugins are set back up how they are, all the icons are how they should be. They're all configured how they should be. So if you're ever at all worried, then just open this up and you can click Save Configuration, give it a name, just have a backup, just in case you're worried about anything going wrong. And I have had it once before. I think this is when I was using Xfce with Linux Mint, where I just turned the computer on one day and the whole, all the panel had corrupted and nothing was there. Go on Panel Profiles, reboot it from there. Simple. It's almost like a non-destructive editing here. Okay, so into the actual panel itself. So I'm going to right click on there, I'm going to go to Panel, I'm going to go into Panel Preferences. And as we can see, we actually have 3 panels. They are labeled Panel 0, which is the bottom one. You can see it's outlined by the red there. Panel 1, which is the side. And Panel 2, which is the top. We're going to start out with the bottom one, Panel 1. So its mode is set to horizontal. I've put it to the bottom, and I've locked it. In case it's ever at the top, then what you want to do is, if I unlock here, you see these little dots down here. That's what I use if it's on the top, to just click and drag down, and then click lock. We never want to hide this panel, because I personally always like to have it open. So just so you know, I'm using a 1080p monitor here, and I like the row size to be 24. I like to have it around about as small as the actual, top pane of a window, like the top bar of a window, just because it looks all, nice and even. I've used sort of, things like GNOME, and I've used things like Mate before that have this sort of look. And I quite like it having equal measure top and bottom, like how much space is being taken up by essentially a black bar of just words on it. I don't really like how in Windows 10 by default it's really thick. I tend to sort of make it thinner, even though then you don't get the data anymore. So I've got that, number of rows is 0, length is 100%, and I've got it set to automatically increase the length, although I don't really think that ever needs to happen. Appearance, now this is quite interesting. It might look like this is black here, but what I've done is I've selected solid color, and I've got this one here, which, if we have a look at that, essentially what I've done is I've gone completely black, and I've dragged the opacity slider along a bit to make it slightly translucent. Kind of hard to see in this particular one. It's a very, very subtle effect. I see it mostly when I'm having actual windows open. I'll see a little bit of, say, Mars in this case, poking through, or any of the other wallpapers I'm choosing. It's just a nice little thing to have. And then we go into items. This is the real meat of it. So this is actually in order of the top being the furthest left, and the bottom being furthest right, the items I have. So what we have here is the whisker menu, which should come as default on most, Ubuntu, for example, installations using Xfce. But it might not come on all, because the other option is the application menu, which is fine, but there's no searching in it. It's just a load of categories, and then you have to go through menus. It's quite old school. Some people might prefer that, but I prefer using the whisker menu. Now, if you have a quick look at the whisker menu, what I've done here is if we go on, you can either go on the cog here, or I can right-click the icon and click Properties. I've changed the icon to be Xfce Penguin, because, coming from Windows and everything like that, I'm used to seeing, the main icon of the operating system being there. And obviously, this is Ubuntu Studio, so I've actually got the main icon up in this other one up here. But, I first became aware of Linux in sort of the early to mid 2000s, so I've always associated Xfce Penguin with the overall system. I just like having him there, he's quite nice. You can add sort of names or take away names here or there and check the size. And what I've done here is I've changed the background opacity to being 65, which might not be super obvious here, but if I bring it over OBS, you can see it a little bit more, just a little bit of translucency. It looks quite nice, I find. So back on here, and then what I've done is I've actually added 2 show desktop buttons. One down there, and one down there. And that's the typical thing where, you click it and all the windows disappear. I'm used to having one in the bottom left-hand corner there, bottom right-hand corner there, due to, using stuff like Windows 7, Windows 10. But also, I have a lot of memories of using Windows XP, so I'm used to there being one here as well. You'll see I have this little tendency of repeating things across my panels, as I just like it to be convenient, It's less minimalist, but it's more whatever I can come to at the time. Whatever I'm closest to, I can just click to get the desired result. I then have 3 launchers, and these are actually launchers for programs here. And when you add one in, you need to click on the cog, and then click on plus, and actually add in the program you want to be running. So I've got Firefox, my web browser, then I've got the terminal emulator, and then I have my file browser. And this file browser I'm actually using isn't the default for Xfce, which is Thunar. It's actually Nemo, which is the one that's been built for the Cinnamon desktop by Linux Mint. I feel like it's just the best file manager on Linux. I really, really like it. Not the theme is not good, it's just there are a couple of features that Nemo has that I just prefer using. So I've got that set there. And then I've got a separator. It's a very small thing here, it just separates those two. I just don't like how they look when they're clamped together, that's a really aesthetic thing. But something you do want to do whenever you add a separator in is go to the cog and set the style transparent. Otherwise, you know, if you get like a separator, we get this horrible line. You might like how it looks, I just think it looks really ugly. I prefer not to have it there. Then the window buttons. These are obviously the buttons which we can now, I can select between whichever programs I have open. And then I have another separator, but this separator is slightly different to the previous one. If you have a quick look at the previous one in settings, we haven't ticked expand. But in this case, we have ticked expand. So this means that it'll separate whatever is the furthest over here to the left, being the window buttons, and everything else over to the right. Otherwise, if I untick that, everything moves over here and we get nothing over in this corner. It essentially pushes everything right over. And now, as you can see, just adding in items like this and using separators, I feel like it's a very intuitively customizable desktop. And I always think that in popularity basis, I know that everyone always compares GNOME and KDE, but I personally feel like Xfce is the GTK equivalent of KDE. It's still not quite as uber customizable as KDE. KDE is super, super customizable, but I personally prefer using GTK and I personally prefer using Xfce for a lot of things. And then we have a couple of little buttons here: notification area, indication plugin, a status notifier plugin, and all these are set to do slightly different things. And as you can see, actually, one of them normally, like the status notifier plugin, actually should have OBS on it right now, but I've got it ticked as hidden. As you can see, I have it up here. I want them to be just, this is just sort of system critical things here. Stuff that will be running all the time and will be there. I don't want this panel filling up, as it's already going to be being filled up by me opening and closing programs. Then we have the Pulse Audio plugin, simple volume manager. And then we have the clock. And the clock's quite a fun one. This is a very, very customizable clock. I like it very much in this sense. I have it set to, GMT because in Britain. But what I actually wanted to do is I set the format to a custom format. And here we go. If you have a look at this, this will set it up to be exactly like mine, being a 12-hour clock, as that's personally what I prefer to use, with an AM PM on there. Then the dash is literally just the dash. And then I have it set up to the British time, with the year being done with 4 digits and everything else being done with 2. You can obviously then, if you take any of these, every percentage equals a number there. So the 04 is the percent I on that, for example, or the year at the end there is a percent capital Y. They are case sensitive. You can mess around with them and just take these and just change them into any order you like. Whatever suits your locale, whatever suits your preference. You can set up to be a 24-hour clock if you prefer. Yeah, it's a really nice little clock. And there are other formats in here, and there are other like faces and layouts, but I like having just a simple little clock there. One last thing is, before I talk about the little desktop button there, is I have another launcher here, and this launcher actually launches the system monitor, and this is actually the Mate system monitor. It's based on the GNOME system monitor, but it doesn't have that really GNOME top panel, that GNOME like window panel. It really suits how Xfce looks a little bit nicer. I just personally prefer how this one looks to Xfce's standard one. Okay, so that's all for panel 1. Let's go into panel 2. This is more the one that's like Unity or a bit more like GNOME. And so what I have here is the mode is set to desk bar. Now, I'm not 100% sure what the difference between vertical and desk bar is, but I've just had it set up like this. I have it set to hide intelligently. So this won't work while I have this open, but if I, for example, close this and open up OBS, you can see it disappears unless I put my cursor over there. But if I were to click About, for example, as I'm now focusing on a smaller window, it opens back up again, which I quite like. I can get to it easily. It looks quite nice, but it's not, in your face all the time. I also have it ticked to don't reserve space on the borders. This means that when I go full screen like I did before, the windows when you open up don't go over that unless you tell them to go full screen. That's what reserving space on the borders is, but this time I want it to not reserve space on the borders, as I want to be able to have things, like that going behind it. And when I click full screen, when I want a program like this to go like that, I want this to go away. I don't want it to block a load of space off. Now for this one, the sizing is very, very different. The row size is actually set to 52, and the length, rather than being set to the full 100, is only set to 97. And I have no automatic increasing of length, because I've realised that if I do have it going 100 or going over, it actually blocks the first panel from me being able to click the buttons down here. So this way, if you see just the red outline, it just ends just before this panel begins, giving it a nice little bit of space. Solid color, once again, it's gone solid color, but I've actually picked full transparency here. So in that case, I would just pick black just for good luck, but whatever color it is. If I take this all the way to the end, now just be careful. Some versions of Xfce, like I found the later versions of Ubuntu Studio or Xubuntu that were using the old Xfce 4.12. It wasn't working so much with this, and you also have to double check that the GTK theme you're using allows for transparency, but assuming it does, then you can have all that transparency. Now, this might look like it's set up a little bit more complicated, but it's actually much, much simpler. I have a whisker menu up here, and then I have 19 launchers. And so you know, these launchers, I've just set it up to how I like it. So you can set up how do you like it. I've got Firefox here, I've got the Terminal Emulator, I've got Nemo, then I have basically, I can't remember what they're actually called in this. I always just refer to them as, you know, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. What are they? It's LibreOffice, it's Writer, it's Impress, and it's Calc. Okay, there you go. You know, the three most common Office applications one would use. I have Thunderbird Mail down there, which is the cross-platform free and open source email client made by Mozilla, the same people that made Firefox. I've got button to launch Steam. I've got Clementine, my music player. Ardor, which is a really powerful DAW, digital audio workstation. KDN Live, which is my video editor of choice. I love this video editor. We've got GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program. This is what I use to do my graphics for my videos. We've got Musical, WordPress.com, just so I can, you know, edit stuff to my website. Then VLC, you know, the most common music player I'd use. I've got the Marty System Monitor again down there. And then it's the GNOME Store, an update button if I don't fancy going through the terminal to update things, and then the settings, just easily to get to. Okay, and last but not least, panel 2, the one at the top. Now this one, I'm hoping that red outline is going to appear. Yeah, you can see it's in a bit of a weird position. Now the reason I actually have it in this particular position is so that when I open up a program in full screen like this, is that it completely blends in with the background, and I can still have plenty of access to here. This is the most GNOME-ish, sort of GNOME 3, GNOME shell thing I'd taken from it, because every time I installed a sort of system monitor plugin that would show me my CPU or my RAM, or, you know, something like the temperature of my graphics card, for example, it would appear up in that top right-hand corner, and I really got used to it being there, and I'd love to be able to just put something like that in Windows, actually. That'd be really, really good. So this actually goes over everything I'm doing at all times. There are some programs that, you know, follow the real, like, the proper full-on GNOME paradigm. If I open up there, it just goes right over and looks pretty bad. But anything that follows the window theme, the XFWM window theme I've been using here, just goes over really nicely. Horizontal, I've locked the panel in place now that I found the right place for it. I would never like to automatically hide it, as like I said, I want it to be going over the top of everything else. It's kind of like the combination of the side panel and the bottom panel. In a sense, it doesn't reserve space in the borders, so obviously I can put stuff over it. It doesn't always block it like the bottom one will, but at the same time, it won't go away, so it'll still be appearing there. And it's kind of hard to tell in this, seeing as it's just black in the background here, but there it has no background. So if I decide to change my panel colors to being fluorescent green, for example, it would just go over that really nicely and not block anything. It's not reserving space in the borders. Row size is 27. I found this to be the perfect size to fit over the actual top planes of the windows. As you can see, it actually goes over slightly, but it was a bit too small otherwise. None of the actual icons actually quite peek over the edge. It all fits in quite nicely. And length is only 20%, but I do have it set to automatically increase in length. And this is for things such as we can see, OBS is there. OBS wouldn't normally be there. So if I open up something like Steam or Clementine or any other program which would normally add a little tray icon in here, I have it all set up to going up here rather than going down there. So if we go back into appearance quickly, solid color once again, set it to be transparent. So firstly, I actually have a separator, and that goes right here because that is there to push everything to the right. Because otherwise things would all be pushing towards the left, whereas I'd like to push them mostly to the right. And this separator is set to expand, but it will always contract as more things come in. So, you know, I said how OBS is here. If Steam came in here, it would shuffle everything along this way rather than pushing everything along this way, which would end up blocking, you know, it'd end up blocking the actual window controls there. We then have the weather update plugin, and I have that set just to be just the temperature, just have a little picture, nothing too fancy. I've got Mail Watcher, we've got a screenshot button, then we have notification and the status notifier plugins, similar to what we have near the bottom, but just edited so that they take everything I don't want to be on the bottom up here. So, like I said, when it's not like system critical things, such as OBS, for example, that are just appearing, I'd rather it appear up there and not clutter the bottom, just in case I have loads of programs open at the bottom and I don't want them to all be smushed up. We then have the CPU frequency monitor, which is going to tell us the current frequency of my processor, which is it seems to be 4.08 gigahertz. Lovely jubbly. We then have the CPU graph here showing all 8 of my cores. system load monitor, I have it set up to show RAM, and the network monitor, which I unfortunately haven't been able to get to work just yet. So that's how I have all of my different panels set up. And just before we go on to the next part, if you find that you don't actually have any of these installed onto your system by default, then you can find, actually, if you go onto Xfce's website, you can go on to products and then the panels, then panel plugins, and you get all the panel plugins here that you'd want. You'd have all the ones probably already installed, but any you don't have, you just do, you know, for example, if I wanted the eyes plugin, which just has these weird eyes at spine, I think it's a bit of a hangover from 90s Linux usage, I would go, for example, seeing as I'm using an Ubuntu-based distribution, sudo apt install xfce 4-eyes-plugin, and then it would become available to me. So now let's move on to our next part of our customizing. We're getting near the end now, and this is actually this weird system monitor thing you've been looking at the whole time. Now, in case you're not sure what this is actually a thing called Conky, and it works for all X Windows, sort of, you know, Xorg systems. I'm not sure if it's available to use on Wayland, although I'd hope they would be transporting it over. It's very lightweight. It's literally just text displayed on the screen. You can actually have it setting up to do anything. It can be far fancier than this. It can be like a proper analog clock. It's mad what it can be. So here's how you're going to set it up. You're going to need to download it first. So you're going to go into your terminal, and assuming we're using something like an Ubuntu-based distribution, it would be sudo apt install, and then I did Conky-all, and that'll install everything we need. And then you'll find in your file manager, in your main home directory, you'll actually have a thing called .conky-rc. Now, if you can't see this already, then you need to enable show hidden files, as anything in Linux with a dot in front of it will become hidden. This is the actual configuration folder for Conky itself, and to begin with, it'll sort of appear over here, and it'll have a black background. It'll look pretty ugly. Now, I'm not exactly sure what mine is. Mine's a weird, like, hybrid combination of a load of other ones. I've sort of taken them, used it for a while, then seen something in something else and wanted to add it to mine, and it's all a bit weird. Maybe I'll upload it to like a GitHub or something. Or a great thing you can do is actually go onto somewhere like, you know, DeviantArt, or just look up online, look at screenshots of people, because loads of people love showing off the different Conkys they've done, and yeah, see if they have it. It'll literally just be a text file, or just get some text, copy and paste it into there, hit save, and then get it going. Now, once you do that, it won't immediately launch. You'll be like, what the hell's going on? Here's what you need to do. So we're going to go into settings. We're going to go into session startup. I'm going to go to application auto start, and then you can see I've already added it here. So I would have pressed add and done this, but I'm just going to click edit. It'll be the same thing, and literally we're going to put name, description, and command all as Conky. Hit OK, trigger on login, and then if it hasn't appeared there already, then either log out and log back in, or reboot your whole system, and get it going on there, and it should look really nice. Now, if you're having any problems with it, then there's loads of support online to help you getting your Conkys to work. It might just be a small thing in your configuration you need to change. Also, you know, if you have a white background, then double check you're not already running it and it's just white on there. As you can see, mine needs a little bit of editing. It's jittering here or there, and the temperatures aren't showing properly. It's still a little work in progress. And now we move on to the final part of our customization of the system, just the actual desktop itself. So if I right click, I'm going to go on to desktop settings. Now, firstly, in most Xfce setups, you'll have loads of things like the home directory and everything there. But what I like to have is I have show thumbnails, and I just have the wastebasket appearing, and I like to have it in the little corner down here. I've actually edited my Conky as well to not go all the way to the bottom, so I can actually click on this and move it around. And then on my background here, what I have is I have a load of space and Star Trek pictures, as well as, you know, some Ubuntu Studio ones that look really cool. You've got a Borg cube there. It's about having sort of Mars or Mars of water on it. Get a load of really cool backgrounds, get whatever you like, and then I like to click on change background, have it changing every 30 minutes. So yeah, it'll just take you through all these cool little different designs. So there it is. That's exactly how I customize my, well, not only my Xfce, sort of like just the panels, but also all the theming I do, adding a Conky in, theming my terminal. If you do that, you can get your desktop to look exactly like mine. I didn't imagine someone's actually going to ask me to do a video like this, but I think it's really cool because I like watching different people doing their setups on their different desktop environments on their Linux systems. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe, and I hope someone out there found this useful, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.